What if the life you're calling reality is nothing more than yesterday's assumptions playing themselves out? And what if the line between madness and transformation is only crossed by one simple question? What are you choosing to believe before the evidence appears? Today you'll discover why most people mistake conscious assumption for dangerous delusion, why the mind secretly protects the identity it already believes, and how changing one invisible pattern may begin changing the world that looks so permanent. If this message is helping you see your own mind from an entirely new perspective, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who feels trapped by circumstances. Every week we explore the hidden psychological forces that quietly shape reality, identity, and human destiny. Now let's continue uncovering one of the most misunderstood principles of inner transformation. Most people hear the phrase, "assume your wish is already fulfilled," and immediately think it sounds like self-deception. They imagine someone denying reality, pretending problems don't exist, or escaping into fantasy. But this misunderstanding has caused countless people to reject one of the most transformative psychological principles ever discovered. There is a profound difference between consciously choosing an inner state and blindly refusing to acknowledge the facts. One expands awareness, the other shrinks it. One creates movement, the other creates stagnation. The confusion begins because both can look similar from the outside, yet internally they are worlds apart. A true assumption is not the rejection of reality, it is the selection of a new identity before the external world has caught up. Every meaningful achievement begins this way. Before an athlete wins a championship, they must first see themselves as a champion. Before an entrepreneur builds a successful business, they must stop identifying as someone destined to fail. Before a person finds genuine love, they often must release the identity of someone who expects rejection. Reality rarely changes first. Instead, identity changes quietly, and behavior follows. Over time, the outer world begins reflecting what the inner world has consistently rehearsed. Delusion, however, follows an entirely different path. Delusion refuses evidence because it fears truth. Conscious assumption accepts present circumstances while refusing to let them define the future. Imagine standing in a dark room. A deluded person insists the darkness does not exist. A conscious creator acknowledges the darkness, but confidently reaches for the light switch because they know darkness is temporary. This distinction changes everything. One is built upon denial, while the other is built upon possibility. One imprisons the mind inside illusion, while the other opens the door to transformation. The subconscious mind responds not merely to words, but to emotional identity. If deep within yourself you continue believing, "I am unlucky, I never succeed, or nothing ever works for me," then your perception begins filtering reality through those invisible assumptions. You notice every setback while overlooking every opportunity. You hesitate when confidence is required. You unconsciously make decisions that confirm the story you've repeated for years. Eventually, life appears to validate your beliefs, not because fate is against you, but because your inner assumptions quietly guided your actions, expectations, and interpretations until they became your lived experience. This is why the question is never whether you are assuming something. Every human being already lives by assumptions. The only real question is whether those assumptions are serving your growth or limiting your future. The mind continuously projects expectations into tomorrow, often without conscious awareness. When you deliberately choose assumptions rooted in possibility, responsibility, and inner certainty, you are not escaping reality, you are participating in its creation. The greatest transformations rarely begin with visible evidence. They begin with an invisible decision to become someone different long before the world recognizes the change. Most people spend years telling themselves what they want. They say, "I want success, I want love, I want confidence, or I want abundance." Yet despite repeating these desires, very little changes. Why? Because the subconscious mind does not organize your life around what you wish for. It organizes your life around who you believe you are. Desire can inspire action, but identity determines direction. If your deepest self-image remains unchanged, your thoughts, habits, emotional reactions and choices will continue returning you to the same familiar reality, no matter how passionately you dream of something different. Think about someone who constantly says they want financial freedom, but secretly believes they are destined to struggle. Every opportunity feels risky, every investment feels dangerous, every success feels temporary. Without realizing it, they hesitate at the very moments that could transform their future. The conflict is invisible because it takes place beneath conscious awareness. On the surface, they pursue success. Deep inside, however, they remain loyal to an identity built around limitation. The subconscious always protects what it considers familiar, even when that familiarity brings disappointment. The same pattern appears in relationships, health, and personal growth. A person may long for genuine love while quietly identifying as someone who is always abandoned. Another may desire confidence while carrying the hidden belief that they are inadequate. In both cases, the subconscious filters every experience through that identity. Compliments are dismissed, opportunities are questioned. Healthy relationships feel unfamiliar, while painful patterns seem strangely comfortable. The mind is not trying to punish them. It is trying to remain consistent with the story it has accepted as true. This is why lasting transformation begins with changing the emotional experience of who you are, rather than endlessly repeating what you want. When you consistently imagine yourself acting with confidence, responding with calmness, making wise decisions, and living from a place of inner certainty, your subconscious slowly begins accepting that version of yourself as normal. As that identity becomes familiar, your behavior naturally starts aligning with it. You speak differently, notice different possibilities, take different actions, and respond to challenges with greater resilience. The external changes appear gradual, but they are driven by an invisible shift that occurred long before anyone else could see it. The remarkable truth is that every person already lives according to an internal identity, whether they realize it or not. The subconscious faithfully reflects the image you repeatedly impress upon it through thought, emotion, and expectation. This means the question is not whether your subconscious is shaping your reality, it already is. The real question is whether it has been programmed by fear, doubt, and old experiences, or by a deliberate vision of the person you are choosing to become. When identity changes at the deepest level, desire no longer feels like a distant dream. It begins to feel like the natural expression of who you already believe yourself to be. One of the greatest misconceptions about transforming your life is the belief that you simply need to think positive. People force smiles, repeat affirmations they do not believe, and convince themselves that ignoring negative emotions is the path to success. Yet beneath the surface, fear, doubt, and insecurity remain untouched. The mind recognizes this conflict immediately. Empty words cannot overpower deeply rooted emotional patterns. Lasting change does not come from pretending everything is perfect. It comes from developing an emotional certainty so authentic that it gradually replaces fear with quiet confidence. The subconscious mind responds far more strongly to emotion than to language. You can repeat the sentence, "I am successful," 100 times a day. But if every repetition is accompanied by feelings of anxiety, lack, or disbelief, those emotions carry greater influence than the words themselves. The inner world is shaped less by what you say and more by what you genuinely feel. This is why many people become frustrated with affirmations. They focus on changing their vocabulary while leaving their emotional state exactly where it has always been. Emotional certainty is different from blind optimism. It does not require you to deny obstacles or pretend that difficulties do not exist. Instead, it allows you to remain internally steady even while external circumstances remain uncertain. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm with complete confidence that the sun still exists beyond the clouds. You do not panic because the sky is dark. You understand that storms are temporary. In the same way, emotional certainty means trusting the direction of your life without demanding immediate proof from the outside world. It is calm, grounded, and patient rather than loud, forced, or desperate. This quiet certainty gradually transforms the way you respond to life. Challenges no longer feel like personal attacks, but become opportunities to strengthen your character. Criticism loses its power because your self-worth is no longer dependent on the opinions of others. Delays stop feeling like permanent failures and begin appearing as part of a larger process. Instead of reacting from fear, you respond from confidence. Over time, these different responses create different habits, stronger relationships, wiser decisions, and opportunities that once seemed invisible. The external transformation begins with an internal emotional shift that others may never notice until the results become undeniable. The remarkable truth is that every extraordinary achievement has been supported by emotional certainty long before visible evidence appeared. Inventors believed in discoveries that had not yet been made. Artists trusted visions that no one else could see. Leaders carried confidence through seasons of rejection before anyone recognized their potential. Their strength did not come from forcing positive thoughts, but from cultivating an inner conviction that remained steady despite temporary setbacks. When your emotions begin aligning with the future you are creating, rather than the fears of your past, you stop chasing confidence from the outside. Instead, you become the source of it, and reality gradually starts reflecting that unshakable inner foundation. Every human being carries two invisible voices within. One whispers from the memories of pain, failure, rejection, and disappointment. The other speaks from possibility, courage, and the quiet belief that life can become greater than it has ever been. These voices are not merely competing thoughts, they are competing identities. One pulls you toward the safety of the familiar, while the other calls you toward the uncertainty of growth. Most people believe they are fighting circumstances, but the greatest battle is often taking place inside the mind, long before it becomes visible in the outside world. Fear is remarkably persuasive because it disguises itself as wisdom. It says, "Don't try, you might fail." It says, "Don't trust, you'll only get hurt again." It says, "Stay where you are because at least you know what to expect." At first, these thoughts appear reasonable, even protective, but over time they become invisible walls that imprison your potential. Every avoided opportunity, every unspoken dream, and every abandoned goal strengthens the belief that safety is more valuable than transformation. Without realizing it, you begin living according to old wounds instead of future possibilities. Faith, however, is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that fear will no longer be the architect of your life. It does not demand that every doubt disappears before you move forward. Instead, it asks you to act from your highest conviction, even while uncertainty still exists. Like planting a seed beneath the soil, faith trusts a process that cannot yet be seen. The ground appears empty, but beneath the surface, life is already beginning. In the same way, the deepest transformations often occur long before there is any visible evidence that change is happening. Your subconscious faithfully nourishes whichever voice receives the most emotional attention. If fear dominates your imagination every day, your mind begins preparing for failure before success has even had a chance to unfold. You become hyper-aware of obstacles, suspicious of opportunities, and hesitant when decisive action is required. But when you consistently return your attention to possibility, confidence, and the identity of the person you are becoming, the subconscious gradually accepts that inner state as normal. Your decisions become bolder, your perception widens, and challenges begin appearing as stepping stones rather than permanent barriers. The truth is that fear and faith both ask you to believe in something you cannot yet see. Fear asks you to believe that the worst outcome is inevitable. Faith asks you to believe that your highest potential is still unfolding. Neither can offer immediate proof. The difference lies in which one you choose to feed each day. The reality you experience tomorrow will often reflect the inner voice you strengthen today. When faith becomes stronger than fear, you stop allowing yesterday's wounds to predict tomorrow's possibilities, and you begin creating a future that is guided not by limitation, but by conscious conviction. One of the most misunderstood principles of personal transformation is the idea of living from the end. Many people assume it means pretending that every goal has already been achieved or ignoring the challenges standing in front of them. But its true meaning is far more profound. Living from the end is not about denying your present circumstances. It is about allowing your future identity to guide your present thoughts, emotions, and actions. Instead of constantly asking, "How will this happen?" you begin asking, "Who would I be if it had already happened?" That single shift changes the direction of your entire inner world. Most people live from their current circumstances. If they experience rejection, they begin identifying as someone who is unwanted. If they lose money, they start believing they are destined to struggle. If they fail once, they assume failure defines their future. Their identity becomes a reflection of yesterday's events. Living from the end reverses this process. Rather than allowing the past to determine who you are, you allow the person you are becoming to influence how you respond today. Your future identity begins shaping your present reality, instead of your past controlling your future. Imagine someone who has already become calm, confident, and emotionally secure. How would that person respond to criticism? Would they react with panic, or would they remain composed? How would they approach new opportunities? Would they hesitate because of fear, or move forward with quiet confidence? These questions are not exercises in fantasy. They are tools for reshaping identity. Every time you respond as your future self would respond, you strengthen new patterns within the subconscious mind. With repetition, these behaviors stop feeling forced and begin feeling natural. This inner transformation gradually changes everything that follows. Your posture becomes more confident. Your conversations become more intentional. You stop making decisions from desperation and start choosing from clarity. Relationships improve because you no longer seek constant validation. Opportunities increase because you notice possibilities that fear once hid from your attention. None of these changes happen because the world suddenly became different. They happen because your inner state has shifted, and the external world begins reflecting that shift through your choices, habits, and interactions with others. The greatest transformations rarely begin with dramatic external events. They begin with a silent decision that no one else can see, a decision to think, feel, and act from the identity of the person you are becoming, rather than the limitations of the person you once believed yourself to be. Living from the end is not an escape from reality. It is a commitment to creating a new one from the inside out. When your inner world consistently reflects your highest vision instead of your deepest fears, your actions naturally align with that vision. In time, what once existed only in imagination begins to appear in your everyday life, proving that every lasting change first takes root within before it is revealed without.